Hello, everybody. It's Friday, May 15th. Do you believe it? And I've got a new remote viewing contest that's beginning tonight. And the numbers today, 51515. What are the odds? What does that mean? Well, I've got my producer here, and he's going to explain everything I don't know. He's going to explain to me. The highly esteemed Swami Shiva. How are you this evening, sir?
Namaste and blessings. The Swami welcomes everyone, live or in the archives, with great love and great respect from the heart of all.
Well, a lot of people make a big deal about numerology. I understand a little bit of it, but I don't understand if this is an important date. 51515.
It's interesting, if nothing else.
It what?
It's interesting, if nothing else.
Yeah, that's about it. I can't figure out if that's special, because I know that people get all excited about 91191 or, they wouldn't be excited about that date. But, there are dates that people like, they say that people make wedding reservations like years in advance to get married on a certain date.
I would imagine that happens in June a fair amount, yeah.
Yeah. So, 616 or so, I don't know how they do it. But anyway, I'm glad to be back, and we have some big news, Swami and I, and it's just like we had a baby. It's really sort of like that.
It hurt almost as much.
Yeah, the birth of a new child. And I gotta say that Swami did all the work. All I did was just sit back and smile. So, but anyway, I've got to say at the beginning of each show that this is listener-supported radio, and you have to make a donation morally, socially. This is an obligation. You're listening to this show. Have you donated any money? Can you donate $1? Don't tell me you don't have a debit card, because who in the hell doesn't have a debit card these days? So you go to freedomslips.com, you go down about a third of the way, and on the right there's a little box, and that's where you can click to make a payment with PayPal, a debit card, or a credit card. And any amount is appreciated. $1, $1.50, $2.50, $3. It's all appreciated. And but if you're a big spender, if you donate $50, you get a thumb drive with 900 survival documents on it. And God knows you all need it. I mean, really. I was talking to somebody the other day, and he goes, I don't know anything, but I'm ready to do anything if somebody would tell me what to do. And I was like, oh, God. I like him a lot, but, geez, you don't know anything. Well, you'd think that you'd have to learn something, but I'm thinking, he isn't really alone. So you need these survival documents. Have you sent in $50 and gotten your hands on them? So they're there waiting for you, and you get them on a nice thumb drive. So then if you donate $100, you get 35,000 non-GMO seeds in a freezer pack. Now, how sweet is that? And, when you plant something, you're talking about 60 to 120 days before you get a crop. Then you have to let part of the crop go to seed so that you can have something to plant next growing season. So, but it's a wonderful thing to have food. And what other provisions have you made to have food during pole shift, after pole shift, after the 600-foot tidal wave comes in, after the earthquake demolishes the building that you're in? What provision do you have for food? So that's a great thing. And then you get a DVD disc, or maybe it's a CD, I'm not sure which, probably a DVD, with 900 survival documents. Again, how to can food, how to do all kinds of things that many, many, many of you have never even thought about or tried. And this is not rocket science, We're talking about feeding yourself and surviving, like food and shelter, clothing. I don't even know what's on there. And I'm not ordering it because I already know I could probably write all 900 documents myself. But I might, if I were rich, give much more than $100. I think if I had enough money in the bank, I would just give $1,000 just to make sure that the station stays on the air. And it's a shame that a lot of the big donors are the hosts. Well, I'm not one of the hosts that's going to be doing that because I'm living like month to month, so less is more lifestyle on low Social Security. So I'm not going to be doing that. But, you know, this is the time to, like, step up to the bar, be counted, put your vote in, and vote with money. That's what we need to keep going. So if you'd please do that, it would really be appreciated. Right,
Also,
Tommy?
Gordon, I would add at this point in the information on the donor stuff, Monday, Revolution Radio's Studio B was hit by lightning, and that thing all had to be restructured and such. So we've got an extra burden this month that we're going to need to get covered. But Studio B is functioning, but it was a big hit on Monday.
Well, you know, HARP can control the weather. You wonder if the government's stepping it up a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it might be a message from God, or maybe, you know, the answer for grounding, I hate to say it, is not to ground your equipment, because when you make all of your equipment go to a healthy copper rod in the ground where the electricity is going to have a choice. Can I hit over here and be grounded, or if I hit over here, am I going to have a much better flow? So I live on a mountaintop, and my first thing I did was grade some sand on top of the granite, put down a layer of polyethylene plastic, put down a layer of blue foam, and then cast a slab. It's got rebar in it, but it's not grounded to anything. Then I've got nothing on the house to attract electricity except for the stainless steel wood stove chimney, and that is not grounded to anything. So if the lightning chose to hit it, it wouldn't be going anywhere because the wood stove sits on a huge 5 foot by 5 foot, 2-inch thick stone that itself is sitting on fire bricks that's sitting on a concrete slab with no metal touching anything. So if you want to guarantee that your house is going to be hit, and I think I mentioned this before, but Janet was going to a doctor. He said, "Oh, you need to ground yourself." He goes, "What you need to do is pound a rod into the ground and run a wire in through the bedroom window and tie it to your big toe every night." And I said, "You are the biggest effing idiot I have ever heard in my life. Do you realize that they're guaranteeing that my wife is going to be hit by a lightning bolt?" And he just didn't get it. He goes, "Well, you have to ground yourself against all this bad electromagnetic energy." And I said, "Do you have any idea? I have a Gauss meter, and I go outside, and we had a picnic under a cell tower. It didn't even register the cell tower. And then you go near a tube TV, and the thing goes crazy. You go near a desktop computer, the thing goes crazy. You go near a laptop computer, and it goes a little bit crazy. You go near a cell phone, and it goes crazy. So, I mean, and meanwhile, you're bathed in the sea of electromagnetic energy. So all I can say is that everyone should have their regular electricity converted to 12 volt, then back to regular electricity, then back to 12 volt. And that's a laptop uses regular electricity and converts it to 12 volt DC. So actually, I think most of the computer runs on 5 volts, but I think it's converted to 12. So that's a layer of protection and an uninterruptible power supply. You can't have what do they have that? What's that called? It's just a little thing that you plug into that eliminates sparks. What is that? What do they call that, Swami? Everyone has one, I'm sure.
Oh God, slipped my mind too.
Yeah. Well, anyway, those things really don't work. They'll block some minor thing, like your wife overloads the kitchen and the little breaker for the kitchen goes off. That might protect you against that. But the greatest thing ever is the uninterruptible power supply, because the 120 volt AC goes into a bank of batteries, converted to 12-volt DC. Then it's converted with an inverter back to 120 volts to go for your computer to plug into it. And if you have a laptop plugged into it, it then is converted back to 12 volts. So you have each place where there's a battery will blow up before your computer does. So the electricity doesn't go any further than that. So I don't know what Hawk is, how he grounded out his whole system, but I might suggest that he change it slightly. But anyway, these things cost money, and you really should consider donating some money, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly. Now, I have a new remote viewing contest. What do you think of that, Swami?
I'm anxious to see if anyone gets it like happened last time.
Okay, now I think I'm going to run this until, let's see, that's May. Oh, it's thick. I thought I had 2 pages there. Okay, and then June. So how about the first Friday in July? What date is the first Friday in July?
Let me get my calendar
The 3rd.
here.
Oh, so July 4th is a Saturday. So Friday, July 3rd. This contest will run until Friday, July 3rd. If nobody gets it, I'll tell you on Friday, July 3rd what it is, okay?
Very
Now,
good.
this is different. This is not in an envelope. And you can use all your psychic abilities, your remote viewing abilities, however you do it, other than sneaking through the woods. So, what I've got is a 1.5-story house. I wished I had put a full-size wall on the 2nd floor, but I didn't. I only made it 4 feet high, and it's so aggravating. All I had to do was make it 7 feet high or 6 feet high, and I would be so much happier, but no. But that may be one reason why the house wasn't blown away when the winds reached 165 miles an hour in January of the year 2000. So anyway, and upstairs, it's an east-west house, and there's a window upstairs facing west. And the windowsill is about the height of the wall. It's about 4 feet off the floor. And right in front of it is a bookcase that's exactly 4 feet high. So the top of the bookcase is the same height as the windowsill. And sitting on the bookcase is something that during the day when you're outside the house, you can look up at the 2nd-story window, and you can see, which is in the middle of the house. That's why that's right there. It's like 7 feet tall. But anyway, you look through the windows 4 feet high. You look through you're standing to the west of the house, and you look through the window, and there is this thing on the bookcase, very visible through the window. So it's there for you to guess what it is. Now, I did this before without being on the radio. It was at least 2.5 years ago, and you're not going to believe this, but Robert Pepino, whose show this is, he guessed it, and I wouldn't tell him what it was because his mother wanted to guess, and I wanted to hear her guess too. Now, they both say they're psychic. Well, they both guessed it exactly right. It was scary. They guessed the color of it, the shape of it, the size of it, what it was. It was remarkable. And that took them probably, 10 seconds, each of them. And I don't think she heard what he said, but they described it differently slightly, but they both got it. So now we've got this object on a bookcase facing out the outside through the window, facing west, and when the sun is in the west setting, it lights this thing pretty well, and it's very visible. In the morning, at dawn, it's only visible as a silhouette because the light is coming in the other end of the house. But does that sound like a fair contest to you, Swami?
Yes.
You tell me. You can call in at any time until Friday, July 3rd. I will tell everyone what it is that's on the bookcase. And it was before I had a pocket knife, a lobster claw, and a piece of granite. And those are things that you might expect that living here in Maine I might have. But this you would not expect. I'll tell you that. It's not something that you would think that I would have. But it's very nice. If you had it, you'd be very pleased.
If you
And
would like to call in and take part in the remote viewing / intuition challenge, all you got to do is dial 347-688-2902. Once again, that's 347-688-2902 or Skype Freedom Screen. No dots, no dashes, no spaces, all one word. Freedom Screen through Skype if you want to participate on the whole agenda.
there you go. Now, I really, I was very pleased with these remote viewing results from the last contest, and I'm very interested to see if somebody can get this. This is not, it would not, even if I tried, I could not fit this into any envelope I've ever seen. So if that's a clue, take it, run with it. So, the announcement of our child, and Swami is both the father and the mother.
I'm double jointed.
Sort of hermaphroditically,
Yeah.
he did this. Yeah. He actually posted, believe it or not, I've had a YouTube channel for 10 years, and nothing's ever been posted there. And Swami, with his genius and the assistance of a few unnamed friends, finally figured out how to edit it down to make it suitable for YouTube and upload it to YouTube. And after a false start and a little bit of a processing delay, which we didn't understand. If we understood it, we would have known what to do right away, but we didn't understand it. I mean, this is a learning experience. Swami actually created last week's show on my YouTube channel, and I checked just before the show, and it's got 5 views. Well, why does it have 5 views? Because nobody's listened to it yet. So Janet posted it on her Facebook page, and I guess that's where the 5 views came from. And we're going to see what we can do about that. But really, thank you so much, Swami. It's very exciting. I listened to it today. It's great. I think I'm rather entertaining. I laughed at the quite a few times. I smiled, laughed.
Places.
I enjoyed it. I don't know. Maybe I've been hypnotized, but I really enjoyed it. I think you did a great job. I look like a munchkin because he pushed my picture down to get room for the whole agenda, and that's what the name that Robert named the show, and then he asked me to take it over, so I'm sort of stuck with it. But if I had to give a name for the whole show, I would say it's Extraterrestrial Contact with Planet Earth. That's sort of the main focus, with some news items mixed in, and some odd circumstances and things that point out the foibles of modern life. But so I think I noticed that it automatically lists all these other shows to the right of that, and guess what they are? They're all a whole agenda with Robert Peppino.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think if it were listed under Gordon James Gianninoto, it would come up with the hundreds of other shows I've done. So I'm not sure if that's a way of improving it or not, but I wish that all of you would go to my YouTube channel. And believe it or not, you could subscribe. So you can still subscribe to the archives and get, as Swami described last week, 70 shows a week. And you can't do that on Coast to Coast. You can't do that on John B. Wells' show. And you can't do it on most of the other shows. But you can get 70 shows. And I don't know that this is the only show you listen to. I have no idea. But there are a lot of great hosts, a lot of great information, and a lot of it is real meaningful spiritual contact, conduct that would help you have a better and happier life. So you can still subscribe to the archives, but now you can send a link. People don't have to be subscribed to the archives. You can send a link to your friends saying, listen to this. So thank you, Swami.
You're very welcome. Happy to be helpful.
Well, no, it's more than that. And I was going to listen to your show, which is on Wednesday nights at 10 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And I spent all day at the doctor because I've got to tell you, this, I had nearly died of viral pneumonia in December of 1988, and then I nearly died of bacterial pneumonia in July of 2010. So now I'm on Medicare. So I go to the doctor, and he says, well, we don't have any baseline data on you. We've got to do all these tests. So they do an X-ray, and I've got all these spots in my lung. So this real dipstick physician's assistant calls me in. I said, well, what's the result of the X-ray? Oh, we can't tell you over the phone. Well, you know, when you hear those words, you might as well start crying on the spot because you're probably half dead. So I go in there, and he goes, we think you have small cell carcinoma and you have 6 weeks to live. So, of course, that was a lot of fun to hear that. And I said to him, why? And he goes, well, you've got all these small BVs in your right lung, and they don't look good. And I said, well, you know, I think that's scarring from pneumonia, because in July of 2010, the doctor came back with the X-rays and said he was crying, he was sobbing. He had one X-ray in one hand and another one in the other hand. And he turned to Janet and he said, go home and make funeral arrangements. And he turned to me and said, you have less than 2 hours to live.
What?
So that's how serious it was. And I was in absolute pain. I had cracked every rib in my chest from coughing, and I could barely breathe. And I knew it was really serious. I tried to get antibiotics because my wife and I both had bacterial pneumonia, and we both got it from visiting my mother, because all the patients in her nursing home had bacterial pneumonia, but they wouldn't admit that to us. Then we couldn't get antibiotics. So now I'm 2 hours from death. They put me in the hospital on an IV of azithromycin at 8 o'clock, and I asked for an oak chair because I couldn't sleep. I had to sit upright, and every time I nodded off for more than a minute, my neck would start to crimp, and I'd get a crick in my neck, and I'd wake up with a start and straighten myself up again. So I just sat on the edge of this oak chair because I could not lay down. The pain was so excruciating from my cracked ribs. So finally, that was Friday night at 8 o'clock. That's what I did. I did not move from the edge of the soak chair and trying to get a minute sleep with a minute awake, then a minute of sleep, then a minute awake. And until Sunday morning at 2 a.m., I awoke with a start, and I go, something's different, because when I moved a little bit, my chest didn't hurt, and I felt my chest with my hands, and my ribs were not cracked anymore. And I took a deep breath, and I go, wow, I can take a deep breath, too. So I got off the chair onto my hospital bed, which had been empty since I got there, and I lay down, and I woke up Sunday morning, and the doctor came in, and I sat up, and I said, I'm healed. And he goes, a 63-year-old guy who smokes a pack of cigarettes a day, who's 2 hours from death from pneumonia, does not get healed in 30 hours. And I said, well, I'm telling you I'm healed. And he goes, that's impossible. And I said, well, I'm telling you. And he goes, look, I'm going to wait till Monday morning, and I'm going to do a complete workup, and if I agree, then I'll let you go. So Monday morning, he did a complete workup, and he goes, I'm amazed. He goes, as far as I can tell, you're completely healed, and you can go home. So I felt, and I'm not sure, because this is the kind of thing that you can ask all you want, but you're not necessarily going to get results. But I felt that because it wasn't my fault, as I was told by a psychic, the ETs might help you if it's not your fault, and there's still a lot of good you could be doing. So, of course, I felt like I could be doing a lot of good, so that wasn't the problem. And it wasn't my fault. I mean, I go visit my 95-year-old mother in the nursing home, and she's got bacterial pneumonia, and so does everyone. They're all coughing and hacking. And, of course, Janet and I both picked it up. Well, what healed me was the azithromycin they gave me intravenously. But my wife feeds the birds, and our cat earlier, a week before, had caught a bird but hadn't killed it yet. So she reached over and grabbed the back of the cat, trying to stop it from killing the bird, which is a losing proposition. I can tell you all, don't try and change what a cat has decided to do. And Henry Hudson the Explorer turned around and sunk a fang right into her hand. Well, Janet's 6 feet tall, And pretty soon she looked like the 50-foot woman with the crab claw hand.
No.
So she went to the hospital, and they go, oh, my God, you've got a serious infection. And they gave her azithromycin in a very heavy dose. And that not only healed her hand, but her bacterial pneumonia. So when she brought me to the hospital, she was already on the mend herself. Otherwise, probably would have been both of us in the same room. So getting back to last summer, I said to the doctor, that's probably scarring on my lungs. Oh, no, So they've got to do x-rays, then they did CAT scan, then they did MRI, then they're injecting me with radioactive dyes. And finally, they decide, well, we're going to have a PET test, which is a positron emission test. Now, these are not tests I would have ever chosen, because I made it for 25 years without going to a doctor. And I certainly didn't feel that I liked this guy, because he says, you have 6 weeks to live, and it's 4 weeks into it, and now we're doing the PET test. The PET test is, and you're going to love this, they give you a huge intravenous dose of radioactive sugar, because cancer cells love sugar,
right,
and they will suck it up like nothing. They will beat every other normal cell in your body in intaking sugar, and of course, if the sugar is radioactive, it will show up as a hot spot. So that's what they call the PET test. What it felt like for me was as if somebody hit me upside the head with a baseball bat. It was no fun, and that lasted for a day till I started to get rid of it. But anyway, who wants to be injected with radioactive anything? Right. So they do a complete body scan, and they read the results, and I don't have a single cancer cell in my body. So 4 weeks into my 6-week death sentence, now they had a guy at the Veterans Hospital that was told about the same thing, you have 6 weeks to live, and 2 weeks into it, he shot himself to death. Then it turned out the diagnosis was wrong, just like with mine, and he shouldn't have had to shoot himself, but he already had shot himself, and now he's dead. So his family's suing the hospitals, the doctors. So now I've got a lung doctor, of course, and he saw me then and said, oh, your PET test shows you have no cancer, but you've got to stop smoking. And I said, well, my father was one of 7 children, and all 7 of them chain smoked and drank like fish until they were 100 years old. And my mother smoked and drank vodka until she was almost 95. And I said, so unless my genes turn against me, I'm not exactly worried. I said, pole shift is going to eliminate all tobacco anyway. Where am I going to get more of it? So I'm just thinking, well, I love cigarettes. I'm just going to smoke them until pole shift, and then that could be a year from now. So I got another year of smoking. So anyway, they had, he made a 6-month appointment, then he did an x-ray. Then he did another 6-month appointment and did an x-ray. So I saw him on Wednesday, and they did a CAT scan. I thought they were going to inject me with radioactive iodine. I don't know. These doctors, it's like, we're just testing, it's necessary. So I go in, I find out it's just iodine, not radioactive iodine. And they do the CAT scan, and I go to see him, and he says, everything looks the same, no change. And I said, I think you're trying to kill me with these CAT scans and these x-rays. And he goes, okay, I'm not going to do a CAT scan for a year, and but you come back and see me in November. So then I'm sitting there waiting for him before he came in, and they had a chalkboard there. So I did a giant diagram of the sun, planet X, and the Earth. And then I did 63 million miles from the sun to planet X and 34 million miles from planet X to the Earth. And so when you look at the sun, it's just off to the right. And then I said, read Zeta Talk, and I underlined it. So he came in, and after he finished telling me that I all looked the same, and I complained that he was trying to kill me, I said, have you listened to any of my radio shows yet? And he goes, no, I haven't. Now, this is a guy from India. He's a very famous doctor. He went to Harvard. He's an Indian guy. And he looks intelligent. He acts intelligent. He acts very kind and nice. And I said, you really ought to be listening to my radio show, because this hospital is at sea level. It's going to be underwater. They just spent $300 million on expanding the parking lot and putting in a new skyscraper section to link 2 towers with a cross section. And I said, if they'd spent that $300 million on moving it to that 1,200-foot mountain that's like 10 miles away, they could have taken it by eminent domain, spent $300 million on the preliminary work, and moved the whole hospital up there. It would all survive pole shift. But no, they keep expanding right here on the ocean where it's going to be underwater. I said, you're going to lose your job. All your employees, your whole office, they're all going to lose their jobs. The hospital's going to be underwater. I said, you live in the city of Bangor, Maine. Your wife and kids are going to drown. You're going to drown. Your 401k, I said, when the New Madrid fault goes off and the economy collapses and there's 50 million homeless people, I said, how do you think your 401k is going to be doing? Well, you're not going to be getting your salary once the tidal waves start coming in up the Penobscot River. I said, you probably like your car a lot. Of course, I don't know what car he owns, but I figured he's a Harvard doctor. He's the head of this pulmonary doctor group. I said, you probably like your car a lot. It's going to go. You have to take your wife and kids and move to somewhere in Maine that's at least 300 feet above sea level. The rest of the country needs to be 700 feet above sea level. In Florida, you have to move to somewhere at least 850 feet above sea level. So he looked at me real funny, like he didn't know how to take what I was saying. And Janet and I took a little while to leave, and he left the office, and we went out. He had just walked into the other room and told all 6 female employees about Gordon and his radio show. So he was talking about it when I came in, and I said, yeah, I've got a radio show, and you can just do a search, very simple, Gordon plus Planet X, that'll get you there. But you can do a search for my whole name and get even more. And I'm not selling anything, and I don't have a website, but I've got 100,000 links to my name. And so they were all interested, and they were taking notes and stuff, so I don't know if they'll listen to it. And then I looked at him, and I realized he's developing a pot belly, so I poked him right in the belly, and I said, you know, this isn't good for your health to be gaining weight like that. And then I left.
I bet you left an impression. Besides with the finger on his belly.
Well, you know, don't you love it when they tell you everything and you have to be like the little minion?
Yeah.
Well, I don't feel like being anybody's minion. So, but anyway, that's what I was doing on Wednesday. So by the time we went to a Chinese dinner and got a restaurant and got some takeout and brought it home and ate it, and I talked to you, you told me you were working on the YouTube video, and I said I was going to listen to the show. But as soon as I hung up with you, bam, that was it. I went right to sleep. So I guess I needed it. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem.
But I'd like you to tell people why they should listen to your show on Revolution Radio at 10 o'clock on Wednesdays.
Well, the name of that show is called The Center Path. And this Swami does this show along with Jay Parker from Philadelphia. Some of you may already be familiar with his name. He's been on the truther scene for several years now. He's spoken at a number of conferences and things. His, well, I don't know, claim to fame, but his stock in trade is that he was put through monarch trauma-based mind control as a child in a multi-generational satanic family that worked for the DuPonts in a small town called Arden, Delaware, which was a satanic cult-run town. And he speaks of those experiences, but that's not the focus of the show. The focus of the show is about utilizing what is often referred to as the center path in many traditions and methods and techniques. Being neither a victim nor a victimizer, and in relation to the human form, the center path, as was talked about by the Buddha, represents the channel. It's a subtle channel that moves from the base of the spine up through and out the top of the head, through which the Kundalini energy rises. This rising of this energy, though not always known as Kundalini, the Quakers, this is what made them quake. they were having this, and they just referred to it as Holy Spirit. It's all the same thing. It is natural for the human system. But anyway, we discussed topics related to getting healthier, making good choices, the threats that are inherent in our current environment and society, and that sort of thing. So Jay and I have a vast amount of information to share, and we're more than happy to share that with people and assist them in making better choices and advancing their own consciousness through whatever path or technique or method is most appropriate for them. And that's
well, I don't know Jay at all. I hadn't heard of him until you told me about him, and I'm not really into all this conspiracy stuff. I certainly know just about all there is to know about all the conspiracies, but I'd rather not talk about them. But I do know you now, and I think that everywhere you go, you're very uplifting. So I think that any time that we can have the opportunity to listen to you tell us something, that's valuable.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Hey, I want to ask you directly, since you are a beekeeper, did you hear in the news that somewhere in the neighborhood of 40% of this nation's bee population died off over the winter?
That's possible. The bee population.
Yes.
I think that's possible because of the polar vortex. I'm sure it was centered mostly in the Northeast, but it could have also been other places where there's severe drought. I mean, bees need moisture, and but usually, like in the winter around here anyway, they go inside, and November they kick the drones out. The bees die off, and they get down to a couple hundred bees, and by the end of the winter, where I've seen that the hive has died, it's even where they ate all the honey and then they died because they starved to death and froze to death,
right.
Or they just froze to death because it was so cold and they didn't even get a chance to eat all the honey. I see that there's like a little circle, a little clot of about 100 bees around the queen. It's really sad, and but I believe that's true, and what people don't know is that we've been importing bees from India and China, and they have all these strange diseases. And then you've got these vast fields where people have using Bayer and Monsanto chemicals, mostly nicotine-based, and they spray it on the plants, and the bees bring it back, and it's too much for them. I mean, nicotine is a very strong poison, and of course it kills a lot of insects, but not that they intended to kill the honeybees, but, honeybees are replaceable. You just buy more. So the only reason I got 2 hives this year was because I had ordered them a year ago, and now I've ordered 2 more hives for next year. So, and it's not cheap, I got just a few extra things, and it was about $375.
Wow.
So,
according to this report, the most affected state was Oklahoma, lost 60% of their hives over the winter.
Well, I guess that's not surprising, but I'm going to build a little bee house, and I'm going to put them in there. That's my plan. I'll let you know how it goes. I haven't started it yet, but it's going to be on beams. It's going to like runners, and it's going to have a big ring at either end where the beams are on the bottom, and I can pull it around with the tractor, and I'm going to position it so it gets maximum sunlight, faces south. And then I'm going to have these little windows that bears can't get into, and I'm going to take the screen out and leave them open, and the bees will fly in and out. They'll go into the building. They have an amazing building. You should see the ability of bees. I've seen a field where there were probably 3,000 hives, and they didn't even paint them all different colors. They had painted, some of the levels were purple, some were blue, some were white, and you look at a hive and the bottom thing was purple and the middle was blue and the top was white, and then another one where the bottom was blue and the middle was purple and then the top was blue again. Amazing, no real distinguishing. I mean, if I gave an average person a quiz, like which hive was that, you probably couldn't pass the quiz. But these bees, 3,000 hives in one field, the bees go out, they know exactly where they came from, and they fly right back to it. Now, part of that is each queen has her own smell, and they can smell their hive. They get used to the smell of their queen. So if they land on the wrong hive, which they may be doing, I don't know, they land on it and they take one whiff and they go, oh, that's not my home, and then they continue on until they find their home. I don't know how they do it, but anyway, it's not surprising. Bees are in grave danger worldwide. Luckily, there are people who are taking excellent care of their bees. One reason why hives starve is because the modern beekeeper takes all the honey and feeds them sugar water all winter. Well, I had 13-foot drifts. There's no way I was getting near those hives. And I didn't take any honey, and I didn't feed them sugar water. But yet they didn't finish the honey before they froze to death because it was 30 below day and night for a month.
Right.
And they couldn't take that. But I hope if they're in a little building with insulation, they're going to survive. But I can tell you this, beekeeping is an awful lot of fun. And you go outside and you see the bees buzzing around, pollinating everything. And I have 34 acres of woods surrounding altogether, and it's woods surrounding fields, and the fields are about 27 acres. And I haven't maintained them very well, so there aren't as many blueberries as you would hope, but not commercial quality. But they're all about to pollinate. The blossoms are coming out, and the bees, I probably already have, I supposedly bought 3,000 to 5,000 bees in each of 2 boxes, so that was like, should have been 6,000 to 8,000. Well, when I opened them up, each box had at least 10,000 bees, if not 15,000.
Wow.
And they immediately set about, because they brought them up from Georgia, and they had been in there a month, so the queen was really busy laying babies and hatching them. And the guy told me, he said, open it up so the baby bees don't suffocate. And I'm thinking, what baby bees? And what does it mean, suffocate? But I brought them right home and put them into took them out of their cardboard box, the nucleus hive they call it, with 5 frames, and put it into a hive with 18 frames, wooden pine, white pine, painted. Put them in there, and they seem to be very happy, and they're out there pollinating the hell out of everything. I've got bush cherries, which taste exactly like cherries, but they don't even look like cherries. They're red, but they look like it's a bush, and it grows to be 8 feet wide and 8 feet across, and I have 16 of them, and they're delicious, absolutely delicious. And they love New England. They absolutely love New England. They love an acidic soil, and they love a cold climate. They survived the winter, and they're all blossoming now. And the bumblebees, the little mason bees, are beating out the honeybees to get to the blossoms to pollinate them. And you can get 200 pounds of cherries per bush,
Wow.
And it's a great plant, and it's like a windscreen. And I put them all in a row, so I'm thinking about taking my backhoe and digging them up, because they were only like a foot apart. But I could put them in now that they're bigger, I can put them in various places in the yard and put a little fence around them so that somebody doesn't actually go, what the hell is this, and mow it over. But in the row that they're in, they looked planted. So anyway, I've got a lot of different things going on here. I've got some peach trees, 13 peach trees. And so the bees are really important. I have a friend in Colorado. He had every fruit tree blossomed, and then it snowed 5 inches on top of that, and it went to 27 degrees and killed every blossom. Second year in a row that he's going to have no fruit, 0.
Wow.
So it's tough all over.
Yeah.
And but I feel a responsibility to the bees to keep them alive and have them flourish. And I actually have 8 complete hives. I only have 2 hives with bees in them, and the rest of them are apart, and I'm trying to clean them up and fix them up and put them back together. And when I finish this bee house, I hope to have room for 8 hives. Now, if those 2 survive this winter, and I have 2 more next summer, I'll have 4 hives. But 2 years ago, we had 2 hives, and they swarmed 5 times. Well, I had 3 hives ready, and the bee master must have told the bees that there were 3 hives ready. So when they swarmed, they told Janet in a dream where they swarmed to. And she woke up and went out and found those places, and they were right close to the hive. So they were like, we know you have a hive for us, so we're just going to stay as a little group right here so you can come and put us in our new home. So at that point, we had 5 hives. But then they swarmed 2 more times, and the bee master must have told them, and I don't know who the bee master is, I'm just saying that, but I believe there's nature spirits working with the insects. And so the bee master told them, well, they don't have hives for you. So they swarmed around. It's really interesting because it's like a 20-foot diameter ball in midair, about 5 feet off the ground, going up to 25 feet off the ground, 20 feet wide, of a couple thousand bees all buzzing around in this area. And what they're doing is they're surrounding the queen while they fly. They're not touching her, but they're surrounding her and guarding her, while scouts go off and find places that they could move to. And once the scouts come back and report good news, then they all took off. So both swarms, about 3 days apart, took off heading north. And I hope that they found big old trees out in the woods, because in that direction there was probably 7 miles of woods. But there aren't that many big trees because Maine has been logged and relogged and relogged. And the oldest tree around here is 50 years old, which is not like a 400-year-old oak tree where a branch fell off and the inside's hollow for about 5 feet high. That would be ideal. So I hope they're surviving out in the woods. And last year we had, it looked like our honeybees buzzing around before our regular bees came out of their hive. So I think that at least one of those 2 hives probably survived, and I hope both of them did. And this is a great thing, because if a hive flourishes, they will actually create a new queen, and when she hatches, she'll take a whole bunch of the bees with her and start a new hive. And it's interesting, the bees feed, the queen lays the eggs, and if the bees want to make another queen, like let's say it's too crowded and they've been very successful and every cell is full of honey and there's no more room, they will create another queen. And the way they do that is they take the cap off the cell and they feed the little worm, the little baby bee, royal jelly only, no honey, just royal jelly. And that's what creates a queen. So they know they're doing that. Now, it's interesting that bees have 4 holes on top of their head. 2 of the holes create wax, so the beeswax. So they're always taking one of their front paws and scraping out. It's sort of like taking wax out of your ears, except this is beeswax. And that's where they get it from, is 2 holes on their head, 1 on each side. And then they have 2 other holes that produce royal jelly, and that's what they feed to the queen. Her whole life, the queen only eats royal jelly, and the average bee lives about 2 or 3 months, and the queen lives maybe 4 or 5 years. So that's the difference, and that's why if you go to a beauty salon, oh, would you like the royal jelly treatment? But I can't imagine where they get enough royal jelly. It's not like you can take 100,000 bees out of your hive every day and take a Q-tip and wipe up the royal jelly off their forehead. I mean, doesn't that sound like a lie when they go, yeah, we've got enough royal jelly to give you a beauty treatment every day? You know, give me a break.
I would not believe that. No. I'm curious, though, the suits, the white hooded things, are those necessary every time you approach the hives, or only for doing certain things where you stir them up?
Well, if you open up the hive, it's a really good idea to have it, because there's nothing worse, let me tell you, than having 20 bees land on your ear, or
Yeah.
The bees don't want to sting you, because if they sting you once, that's it, they die.
Right.
They don't want to give their life unless it's in defense. Now, there's warning bees, and they put out a smell that's like bananas. So the one thing you don't want to do is go open up your hive while you're eating a banana, because then all the bees will think, oh, my God, we're being attacked. We have to attack back.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to eat a banana. But a lot of people smoke the hive before they open it up, because the bees, when they smell smoke, they go, oh, damn, there's a forest fire. We better go eat as much honey as we can and then try and survive. So it's a funny reaction, because they immediately go into the hive and eat as much honey as they can. Then they're sort of like drunk. They're lazy and drunk, and they don't tend to attack as much.
Ah.
But what we do is we talk really gently to them. I tell them, hi, I'm coming to check how you're doing, if you need any more cells, or maybe I should put another box with more frames in there for you, or how's everything going? And then I'll open it up and check on them. Now, I had one lady, she goes, well, all my bees died. I said, well, what were you doing? She goes, I open up the hive every Friday. I said, listen, sometimes I don't even open my hive all year, not even once, because they've been doing this for millions and millions of years. You don't just go open up a hive every Friday and take all the frames out and look for the queen and mess with them. I said, they just gave up. You basically killed them.
Wow.
And because, see, they like to go get white pine sap and white pine pollen, and they make a little glue. So the frames the boxes that you're stacking to make a beehive, if you look closely at the pictures, you'll see that every 10 inches there's another little box. And they're just sitting on each other. But once you put them on top of each other, the bees go out and make a glue called propolis. And they will glue the bottom box to the top box. And then when you come out and you try and unstack them, well, good luck. You're never going to do it. You need to put a knife in between the two boxes and twist it to break the seal. So they're weatherproofing, and they don't need you messing around. That really worries them. And, of course, if you're constantly opening up the hive and pulling out frames, you might accidentally kill the queen. Now, my eyesight isn't good enough to see the queen, but she is a little bit bigger. But other than that, it's impossible to tell the difference between her and all the rest of them, especially if you've got like a 10-inch by 16-inch frame with 10,000, not 10,000, let's say 1,000 bees on it, and they're all buzzing around. Bees do not like you to open the hive before it rains. And if you have the hive open and a squall comes up and a thunderstorm starts, God help you. I mean, you might as well. I've seen people looking at a hive with no bee suit on, and then a summer, July thunderstorm starts up, and all of a sudden all the bees sting. They're not like African bees that'll chase you half a mile. They'll chase you about 100 feet. But like I said, they don't really want to sting you because that's the end of their life, and so that they're always thinking about the colony and the survival of the colony. Mm-hmm. So we put on the bee suits. We talk to them really gently, and most times I don't even have one bee trying to sting me. But they're really a riot because you can't handle a frame without getting some honey on you. Then you're trying to walk away. Well, the bees will follow you and go, hey, that's our honey. They recognize the smell of their honey. Like if you had some honey from one hive and you went by another hive, they wouldn't care at all. But if you had honey from a hive and you went by the hive, all those bees would come out and go, hey, what do you think you're doing with our honey? Give it back to us. They will land on your clothing and try and remove all the honey to take it back to the hive.
Wow.
They're really interesting little creatures. And there's a great book, which I feel great about mentioning with you on the air, is The Shamanic Way of the Bee. And this guy talks about this bee masters and the bee whisperers. And so that's what we're trying to do is we whisper to the bees. We tell them we're coming. We tell them what we're going to do and to stay calm. And we're not trying to we're going to not disturb anything and check them out. So it's very rewarding. And like I said before, usually your agricultural extension service will give a course in February, and usually they have room for like 25 students, and 200 people try to sign up. That's how much interest there is.
Wow.
You would think there'd be more bee courses. And they try and finish the course by the time that you can then order a nucleus hive. You can go buy all the parts to the hive, the wooden, the pine, white pine, and put it together and put the foundations in there, the beeswax foundations for them to build the cells on. And you put it all together and you order the nucleus hive, and by the time it arrives, you're ready to start being a beekeeper.
Got it.
But it was I heard from a lot of people that, like just ahead of me when I was buying the 2 hives, there was a guy who was buying 15 hives, and he had lost all of them this winter. And then there was another guy that was buying, I think it was 1,000, it was 1,500 beehives he was buying.
Wow.
He had ordered And so, he lost that many hives this winter. So it's really a losing proposition. You forget trying to make money from beekeeping. Just forget it. But in my case, what I'm really interested in is getting the bees to sustain themselves up here so that I get 100% pollination with the blueberries. Because after pole shift, I want to have a lot of blueberries. And I intend to build some greenhouses where I will have screens and I will dehydrate the blueberries. That's right. We'll be back. Welcome back to the second hour of the Friday, May 15th, 51515. That's the date. Do with it what you can. The second hour of the show with your host, Gordon James Gianninoto, and my producer, Swami Shiva. So, I'm going to say one more thing about bees. When you buy a pound of honey, just remember that the bees went up to 3 miles from the hive to get that honey, and they made 1 million. Think about that.
Wow.
1 million trips. So, and I'm lucky. I've got all organic fields all around me, people that don't use chemicals, don't spray. They used to spray Velpar from a helicopter like crazy, and they stopped that in the whole area. In a sense, it's kind of sad because a lot of the blueberry fields in the area have grown up, and now they're just a bunch of saplings and shrubs and stuff, and the blueberries have been overshadowed, and they're sort of dying out. I don't know how they spread them. If they plow the soil and throw blueberries in there, I have no idea. But these are the native lowbush blueberries. What happened in Canada was Canadian government goes, oh, blueberry, that's a good business. So they cleared like 1 million acres of lodgepole pine and put in lowbush blueberries. So it used to be that a pound of sprayed, not organic blueberries at the field was worth up to $1.50 a pound. But once the Canadian government put in 1 million acres of blueberries, now a lot of the blueberry freezers don't even bother hiring anybody to rake the blueberries, which are why the fields are growing over, because nobody can make any money from it. And they're selling washed and frozen blueberries for 65 cents a pound to freezers in Maine. So they're selling blueberries that are actually from Canada as if they got them from Maine, and they didn't. They got them from Canada, and they're selling them for like 95 cents a pound. So it's quite a shift in the business. But in the meantime, a lot of people have been really interested in organic blueberries. So I can sell a quart of organic blueberries, which, let me just say, that has got to be the most hellacious work in the world. You're bent over on a hot, sunny day in a field, and you just feel like you're a French fry in a fryolator. I mean, it is just incredible amount of hard work. You're bent over with this 16-inch wide rake that looks like a giant comb, and you rake the blueberries up, and the berries come off and go into this little, it looks like a dustpan, really. Instead of the pan part, you've got these steel prongs, and you're raking the blueberries. And then you put them in boxes, and then you winnow them to get the seeds and the twigs out, which, if it's a windy day, you can do it by standing head height, pouring the blueberries downward into like a big box, and the wind will blow the leaves and the twigs away. So people always want clean blueberries, and they can really bitch if you don't get all the twigs and the leaves out. But whereas a regular quart might be $6 or $7, an organic quart could be $10, could be more than $10. So, but Janet and I have tried it several years in a row. We were going to, 27 acres, a good year, you could have 1,000 pounds an acre. That could be 27,000 pounds at let's say $1.50 a pound. If we sold them to the blueberry freezer, that's a good amount of cash, $35,000 a year. Well, the truth is you only have half the fields because you burn or mow half your fields one year and then the other half the next year. So then the burned blueberries sprout new leaves and then fruiting spurs, and then next year they fruit. So most people do half a field each year. So there's a lot of glut to this business, and it's not easy. Then they decided to take all the beautiful rocks that make Maine blueberry fields so gorgeous. Take all the rocks out of the field that were left there by the glacier and fill the holes in with sand, and then they either pile them up along the field or cut them off for landscaping or fill or whatever they do with them, crush them into gravel. Excuse me. And then they have an $80,000 attachment to the tractor that you put on there, and it will rake, with this $80,000 attachment on your tractor, it will rake 400 boxes a day, and a box is 25 pounds. So that's the trend. You see whatever fields around here, and they were just so gorgeous. You couldn't, if you were driving by, you had to stop and take a picture, because these white granite rocks sticking up out of maroon, they all turn maroon, cranberry colored in the fall, and then in the summer it would be all blue, a sea of blue, and a little bit of green. And in the spring, it's just green with these rocks and just going off with the ocean in the background. Gorgeous, gorgeous. And now it's rare to see a field that still has the rocks in it. So things are changing. And I understand the federal government will actually pay you to upgrade your farmland. So these growers have been getting like these huge payments, like $50,000 cash, to take all the rocks out of their fields. Well, okay. You know, I understand the agribusiness, but aesthetically, it's really a crime. But, you know, a lot of these places are going to be underwater, so it really doesn't matter. And there won't be any more blueberries, and who will care what the rocks are doing? And probably the tidal waves will move some rocks around again and spread them out. And then the fish will enjoy them. So now for a little bit of news. I see that I didn't see the news, but somebody called me and told me that the federal jury in Boston has sentenced Zokar, the Boston Marathon bomber, to death. I don't know if you'd heard that or not, Swami.
The alleged bomber, the framed bomber, that was an entire hoax staged with crisis actors, and the blood that was spread on the ground wasn't even the right color. If anyone has ever actually seen blood at an incident or an accident or anything, you would quickly be able to tell that that was all staged. I've heard the audio of announcement coming over a bullhorn, "This is a drill! This is a drill!" before the explosions happened. So
I don't normally wouldn't even want to disagree with you, but I have to disagree with you because I get local Boston news, and especially with the Boston Red Sox, they've covered this unbelievably, because that was on Patriots Day. They have a game that ends at 11 in the morning, and then they go right to the marathon news. And that was a real bomb. I've seen the people without their legs. I've heard their stories. I've seen all the pictures and the videos, and I absolutely have no question in my mind that he really did shred the legs of all those people and kill however many it was, 3 or 4, 5, 6 at the marathon, and then the policeman at the other location. And I saw the boat with the blood on it, where the shootout, and his note that he wrote inside the boat. And I've seen interviews with all kinds of people who went through it, and I have no doubt. I was watching the footage of the marathon when the bomb went off, and it was absolutely frightening, devastating. And then, during the trial,
I'll give you a video to watch that will change your mind completely. I guarantee it. I'll give it to you.
People have been bringing this up to me since it happened, and I still disagree.
Well, you just got to see the actual footage and what really happened, as opposed to the way it was presented.
I've watched so much footage that
no, you're talking about mainstream stuff, though.
No,
it was so they could test out martial law and tell people to shelter in place and make people close their businesses and test out what martial law would be like. And that's what they ended up doing in order to chase a 19-year-old unarmed kid.
I'm still disagreeing with you.
That's okay. We can disagree.
Yeah. To me, that was a real event, and it's horrendous. And So, in any case, they sentenced him to death, and I guess he was sitting there and he didn't testify, which he doesn't have to. And the only time he cried was when his aunt got on the stand. But then they had a nun at the end that said she met with him 5 times and he expressed remorse, but he never showed remorse when they showed all of the victims laying there with their legs blown off and all this other stuff. So I really don't feel sorry for him, and I do hope that he is put to death. I know it's probably going to be 20 years before that happens, but I'm really glad. And, they call him the Joker because of his name, Zokar, and they also call him Speed Bump because he ran over his brother to escape, and whatever shape his brother's in before he ran him over, running him over, finished him off. So this is a heartless individual, and I have no regret that he was sentenced to death. That's my opinion of it. You can disagree with me if you wish. That's fine with me. That's what the beauty of freedom of speech, exercise your freedom.
Yep.
That's what this radio station is all about. Plenty of other frauds that have been put on the American people. I have no doubt about that, and I can name most of them, but this was not one of them in my opinion. And it's just a sad situation, but I guess it's come to an end. Of course, the government's paying for his appeal and paying for his family to come. His mother didn't show because she's still in hiding because of her shoplifting arrest that she never showed up in court for. So it's a wonderful family. But in a little bit cheerier news, at least at this point, Mary Lee takes a bite out of the Big Apple. Do you know what I'm talking about, Swami?
Mary Lee?
Mary Lee takes a bite out of the Big Apple.
No, nope. That one didn't hit my radar.
Well, they tagged a great white shark, an apex predator, a huge female off of Massachusetts a couple of years ago, and they gave her a name, Mary Lee.
Ah.
And for those of you who like great white sharks and think the whole thing's interesting, you can actually go online and track her. They've got a satellite tracking her. They know where she is every single day. And lately, she's been heading north along the Jersey Shore about 50 yards off the beach, which is pretty close for a fish that is, I don't even know if a shark is a fish. Is it a fish?
Yeah. It's got gills.
A shark is, this shark is 16 feet long and weighs 3,400 pounds.
Wow.
Now, she hasn't eaten anybody yet, but if they have a shark attack, they're going to know exactly where Mary Lee is because they've been tracking her. They thought that she would be like 50 miles offshore and this and that,
Mm-hmm.
off in the deep blue Gulf Stream waters, and maybe on the edge of where the Gulf Stream meets the cold Labrador current that comes along the shore of New England. They figured that's where she'd be, but no. She goes as far south as Florida, and then they thought, well, she would go to Florida in the winter and come back to New England in the spring. But no, she likes to go to Florida in the summer, and she likes to go to New England in the winter or the spring. And so anyway, anyone that's interested in this can do a search on Google for tracking Mary Lee. So now personally, they had hunted all the seals, and that was made illegal. And now seals are a really big problem. And there's some islands that are just covered with seals, and you can smell that island from about 10 miles away because it's all seal urine and seal poop, and they're just come out of the water and lay there and poop and piss, and really obnoxious. But they were hunting the sharks, so that became unpopular. That you shouldn't be hunting the great white shark. So now the sharks are coming back, the seals are coming back, and of course a swimmer in the water to a great white looks a lot like a seal, and they like to take a bite, and then if they're pretty sure that they like you, they will come back and eat half of you in one bite and eat the other half of you in the other bite. So this is no joke, and 50 yards. 50 yards at Seaside Park. I've been to Seaside Park as a kid, and I've been at least 50 yards offshore. It's the water 75 degrees. It's the summer. There's big ocean breakers. You have a raft. You're paddling around. You come in on the breakers sometimes. Sometimes you just stay off the beach, and it's just delightful. And the idea that there would be a 3,400-pound great white shark sniffing you out right there, that close to the beach, is not quite amusing. So that was sort of a big story of the week.
Wow. That's an enormous shark. I didn't even know they
Yeah,
got that big.
she is not even full size.
Wow.
And they said, well, she's an apex predator who controls all the species beneath her. Well, guess what? We're one of the species beneath her.
Right. We're part of her food chain.
But people who are interested, I didn't know they were tagging them and satellite tracking them and giving them names. And with that name, it was the grandmother of somebody who caught her originally and tagged her. He named it after his grandmother. So that's got the name Mary Lee. But there she is, and she hasn't eaten anybody yet, but I say it's only a matter of time. Now, they don't usually come up to Maine, but I do remember talking to a guy. He had about a 20-foot boat, and he was out in Penobscot Bay, about 20 miles from the ocean, and he figured maybe he could catch a bigger fish if he used a heavier line and a big hook with a big bait fish on the hook. So he's just whatever you call it, trolling around in Penobscot Bay, about 5 miles west of Stonington, Maine. It's a nice hot summer day, and all of a sudden this fish takes the bait, and it starts pulling him, and he thinks, wow, I must have gotten something good. I'm going to try and reel it in. Well, he couldn't reel it in. Meanwhile, he starts pulling this boat at about 10 or 15 miles an hour, so he's like, what the hell? Then he's like really studying it, and he sees there's a giant fin, and he realizes a great white shark had been in Penobscot Bay and took his bait and is now pulling him out to sea.
Oh, my.
By now, he's going like 4 or 5 miles towards the open ocean, which is 20 miles from where he started. So he's about 15 miles from the open ocean, and he goes, oh, Christ. So he manages to cut the line, and the shark continues, and he turns around and goes home. But you wouldn't think there'd be great white sharks here, but yet nobody should be surprised if they are here.
Mm-hmm.
So, now, if you remember, I've been mentioning that people should get a strip of bell wire, 3 feet long, strip the insulation off it, straighten it out, put a loop right in the center, and balance the loop on a pushpin on a cork or a pushpin on a plastic bottle. And if the pushpin has got a little line in it, which a lot of the plastic that's put into a mold has a little line on it, then sand that flat so that there's no line on the top of the pushpin. Bend the ends of the wire down a little bit so that it balances on the loop on the pushpin. And if one side is heavier than the other side, just take a scissors and just snip off little short sections of copper until both sides are perfectly balanced. And then sit there and put your finger 1.5 inches away from the end of the copper wire and think push. And then move your finger towards the wire, and the wire will go away from your finger and around in a complete circle as many times as you want. And then you can tell your finger, your energy, because this is your etheric body, your energy body is doing this. You can tell your body to stop, and it will stop turning. And then you can tell your finger to pull, and as you pull your finger away, the wire will follow your finger from no more than 1.5 inches away, about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. And has anybody tried that? Have you tried that, Swami?
I can knock human beings off their feet without touching them. So that was part of my martial arts training. So, yeah, I can already do that sort of thing.
You won't try it? I didn't understand what you're saying there.
Oh, I said I can knock human beings off their feet without touching them. That was part of my martial arts.
Okay. So, but I just thought maybe you would find a piece of bell wire somewhere. It's the old telephone wire before they went to the multi-stranded wire. They had these gray wires, and you open the insulation. There's 4 different wires in there, a red, a white, a blue, and a yellow. And you just take one of them. But now you don't see that kind of wire anymore. So you've got to go to a lumber yard or a grocery store, and you buy not a grocery store, but some hardware store,
Right.
and you buy a strip of bell wire. I wish somebody would try that and call in and tell me what they think. And by the way, what are the call-in numbers again, please?
Area code 347-688-2902. Once again, that's 347-688-2902. And Gordon from the chat room, one of our chatters named Thunderbird, would like to know what you think about Sandy Hook.
Oh, well, now that's really interesting, because that's another thing. Now, I would say that probably you think that's a hoax, too.
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you why it isn't. You might not like this, or you might like it, you might not like it. Okay. In 2012, a member of Parliament in England stood up in the House of Lords. I think his name is Lord James. He stood up and he said, I want to know where the $15 trillion went. And he explained that they had proof that the Federal Reserve had transferred $15 trillion to Chase Manhattan Bank. And Chase Manhattan Bank had held it overnight and then transferred it to the Royal Bank of Scotland. And they held it overnight and they transferred it to the HSBC Bank in London, and it disappeared. And he wanted to know where it went, and he wanted to have an investigation of that. So the Senate Banking Committee in the United States decided, now that's a pretty interesting subject. Let's hold some Senate banking hearings on that too. And they hadn't scheduled it, but they were talking about as soon as they could make arrangements, they were going to schedule it. The arrangement that they wanted was, it turns out there are two men in the world who are experts on money laundering with computers and transfers and overnight transfers. And you can just imagine if you had a bank and you got the overnight interest rate on holding $15 trillion, you would never have to work another day in your life. But where did this money go? Well, then it came out that it seems that there are two brothers in Indonesia, or of Indonesian heritage, who go by different names, who have been photographed with President Clinton at fundraisers, Bill Clinton, of course, and with other famous and wealthy people around the world, and that they had loaned the United States government $500 trillion during the Clinton administration for secret purposes. And they demanded that there be some repayment immediately, whereupon somehow the Federal Reserve found $15 trillion. Now, that's supposed to be the amount of the deficit at the beginning of the second term of Obama. That's the unpaid debt of the United States government was $15 trillion. If you go to the U.S. debt clock, which is a very interesting site, a lot of you have seen it, maybe some of you haven't, it's easy to find, and it shows you the total debt as it increases second by second. I mean, it's just like a blur of numbers as it increases. But if you go below the clock and you see and it's not a clock, it's giving you the balance of the debt, of the national debt. But if you go below that, you see that the unpaid obligations of the United States government now total $150 trillion. So when you hear that we owe $15 trillion or $18 trillion, that's not even close. It's 10 times more than that we owe. And this debt clock webpage, which the numbers, every kind of number that involves this is there on this one page. It's white with black letters. It has some red and blue letters too. But it's very easy to read. It's easy to understand. And right there it is. So the question is, where did the Federal Reserve get $15 trillion? Why was it given to the Chase Manhattan Bank? Why did they transfer it to the Royal Bank of Scotland? And how did it get to HSBC? And where did it go after that? It was thought that it was given to these two brothers, but the trail was lost after HSBC. So they needed these two guys. Well, they were setting up the hearings to have these two guys, these experts who can trace any money anywhere. That's how good they are. Well-known, worldwide figures. And all of a sudden, the shooting happened in Aurora, Colorado. Whatever his name with the red hair there, he shot up the Batman movie with an assault rifle. And there were some strange circumstances to that. He had put bombs in his apartment. There was a trail of blood going out to the parking lot, and then it seemed like it ended on the edge of a sidewalk where maybe somebody had picked him up. So who was picking him up? Was there somebody else in the theater? He seemed to have a lot of equipment, tear gas. Then he seemed to be a troubled kid. Anyway, guess what? That shooter in the theater in Aurora was the son of the number one money laundering expert in the world. Now, we go a few months later, and this kid in Sandy Hook, his parents are separated or divorced, and he lives with the mother.
Mm-hmm.
She takes him to the gun range and buys him guns, and she teaches him how to shoot, and while she's asleep, he shoots her. Then he goes to the elementary school and kills, I think, 26 students. And he gets, he's arrested, wasn't he? Or was he shot dead? I forget. Do you remember?
No, he's dead, allegedly, if he even existed.
Yeah. So anyway, guess what? He's the son of the other money laundering expert.
Right, the
money
LIBOR
laundering.
scandal guy.
What?
The LIBOR scandal guy.
Yeah. So, and LIBOR is the nightly interest rate on holding overnight rate on. But that's really just part of it, because the real story that got everybody all excited was, where did $15 trillion come from, and where did it go to? Well, if the Federal Reserve can just transfer $15 trillion, what else have they got going? Well, lots of people have said the secret economy of the United States, run by the CIA and the NSA, is about $800 trillion a year. So, we talk about billions this and billions that. But anyway, so these are the two well-known, worldwide acknowledged experts on money laundering. Both of their sons created mass shootings. And what do you know? The Parliament canceled the banking hearings, and the Royal Bank of Scotland and HSBC agreed to pay about $3.5 billion each in penalties. And then the Senate Banking Committee hearings in Washington were canceled, and Chase Manhattan agreed to pay some money for money laundering or whatever, some vague thing, unnamed, undescribed. They paid a $3 or $4 billion fine, and it was never brought up again. So now, do you really think that there wasn't a shooting in Aurora, or there wasn't a shooting in Sandy Hook?
Correct. Sandy Hook. Aurora, yes, there was shooting there, but there were more than one gunman, and James Holmes's weapon was found in the trunk of the car. So he didn't do it. He was a patsy as well. But yeah, I'm aware of the parents and James Holmes himself, the guy who was, patsied, was a neurological student going for a PhD in something to do with things that are applicable to mind control and that sort of thing. And whenever you see him in court, he looks like he's completely zoned out on something, So.
Oh, I agree with that. He looks like he was programmed from day one.
Right.
And but Sandy Hook is interesting because I grew up 10 miles away at my father's house, and it was on a mountaintop, 1,000-foot mountain, and I could look down into Sandy Hook. In fact, I could almost see the school hidden behind the trees from 10 miles away. Mm-hmm. Now, when I grew up, when I was in the third grade, I had a pocket full of bullets, as did every other boy in my class. Mm-hmm. And while the teacher was talking, we would take the bullets out and play with them on the desk and put them back in the box and put them back in our pocket. And when the bell rang at 3 o'clock, we would all run out into the hallway to our unlocked lockers, and we would pull out our .22 caliber rifles out of our unlocked lockers. All the boys in the third grade class, none of the girls, because this is male only. And we would we would run downstairs to the National Rifle Association shooting range, and we would have an NRA instructor teach us sharpshooting. And I had won many commendations, medals, patches to sew on my shirt, all kinds of things. And this was normal when I grew up in Reading, Connecticut, in the 3rd grade. And then they built a new school, and the new school did not have a shooting range in it, and so that was the end of that. But it was normal that people would have a hunting rifle in their car on the school grounds because they were going to go hunting later, or they were going to go target shooting, or they just liked having a gun in their car. Nobody thought about it. Mm-hmm. And then you see what happened in Sandy Hook. So I had a really good friend who's a lawyer in Danbury, and he lived in Bethel, and one of his best friend's son was killed, and he went to the funeral, and it was very sad that he had known the boy, and he never saw him again. He was like buried as he went to the funeral. So, I mean, I wasn't there to see this myself. I didn't see the Aurora shooting myself, but I know there's a lot of funny business with it. But when I look to what the governments were trying to do, the English and the American governments were trying to do over this transfer of $15 trillion, and the fact that those two men who could have exposed where the money went, both of their sons had huge shootouts, and then the matter was dropped. I've got to say there was a lot of funny business involved with it.
Okay, that was just one of the chatters. Wanted to hear what you had to say about Sandy Hook. So there we go.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm quite pro conspiracy theory on a lot of things. Like, you just look at the bomb blast from Oklahoma City, and all the debris went out from the building. It didn't go from the truck towards the building, the truck that supposedly had the bomb on it, that was out on the street. Instead, if you looked at the pictures of the debris, you see the building is shattered towards the truck. Now, if a bomb's in the truck and it's on the street in front of the building and the bomb goes off, all the windows should be blown in, and whatever parts of the building were affected should be blown in. Instead, obviously, there were bombs wired into the building and the debris went out. As for Flight 93, I immediately went to Microsoft Terra Server, which used to have the satellite pictures of Earth, and right where they said the plane had crashed in the field, the Terra Server was not updated moment by moment. It was like a year-old picture. It showed a gravel pit right there, and they said that's where the plane went down, and that's the hole that it made, and I knew that was a lie. As for the World Trade Center, I feel they were both brought down with 2 suitcase neutron bombs, H-bombs, down in the basement, because I tell you this, if you drop a slab of concrete 1,000 feet, it's going to break into pieces. It isn't going to break into powder.
Right.
And, the average building that collapses anywhere in the world is the debris is 34% of the original height of the building. And here we had 2 holes, like 100 feet deep each, with molten steel at the bottom. And those basements were both Federal Reserve gold bullion storage places. And at 6 that morning, they loaded up the last truck and drove the gold away. Only 3,000 to 4,000 people died when there should have been 100,000 people in those buildings. So, I have no doubt that was arranged. And Oklahoma City, in my opinion, was to kill some federal children to make up for killing the children of David Koresh in Waco.
Yeah, I happened to get to meet I happened to get to meet when I was a member of the Arizona Unregulated Militia. We had 2 guys who were former ATF agents who helped to plant some of the explosives in the support structures of the Murrah building in Oklahoma City. And they were running for their lives, trying to get away from what they had been involved with, because they didn't know there were going to be people in there. They were just assigned to rig it to blow out from the bottom, right, so it would collapse. Because anyone who knows anything about explosives knows something sitting across the street or even in front is going to break glass out, but it's not going to knock the support structure out. That's got to be surgically exploded to remove.
And I mean, there's all this stuff. You look at the evidence. You see that they told the federal judge across the street, "Don't come into work this week. It wouldn't be a good week to go to your office." And he was right across the street from the federal building. Mm. There's a million of these stories that go on and on and on. But the World Trade Center was designed to be blown up in 1975 with Nelson Rockefeller and President Ford as a false flag operation, and they put it off, and then they pulled it off in 2001. Mm-hmm. But it was they had the original design, and they said, no, it's too sturdy, and they redesigned all the steel construction to make it more flimsy. But it's still, there's no way a steel building in the history of the world has ever collapsed from being hit by an airplane or a fire.
Right.
And I was
way up at the top, not even down at the bottom. Why would the whole rest of the building just collapse into its footprint?
Well, but even the footprint was empty. I mean, there was hardly any debris there. I mean, there was debris there, but hardly any. The thing is that the only Geiger counters they had registered tritium, and there was like 1 million times more than normal tritium, but they didn't measure any other nuclear byproducts. But that's the beauty of these sophisticated suitcase bombs, is they really don't leave a lot of radiation. Mm. Like, people think, well, the only nuclear weapons used were Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Another place they used a nuclear weapon was at a nightclub in Bali, Indonesia, and they said, well, that was just a big bomb. No, it wasn't. It was a mini nuke. There have been a lot of these instances. Now buildings are designed so they can be brought down with the mini nukes, and not for false flag operations, but just because it's cheaper to implode them into themselves than it is to take them apart. Mm-hmm. And there's so many aspects to this that, I'm not going to continue with this because I really want to talk about other things. But it's not like I haven't looked into this stuff and I haven't studied it and formed an opinion, because I have. So it isn't like I'm just sitting here with my hands over my eyes pretending the world is a sweet and wonderful place. Absolutely, I believe that some of the most evil, selfish people in the world are humans walking around on Earth. You don't even need to worry about bad extraterrestrials if you just look at what some of the humans. It's just the fact that Dick Cheney wants to spray us all with poisonous chemicals before pole shift to get rid of the useless eaters, and then do it so close to pole shift that he never gets caught. So, there's some lovely people out there with wonderful plans. But, So last week I made an error. Nancy's little spies caught me in it and told Nancy, of course. But I don't really mean that in a derogatory way, because I hope that everybody from poleshift.ning.com listens to the show, because I do have a good relationship with Nancy, and she does give me a lot of information, and there isn't really anybody else from the Ning who's on the radio. And Nancy has been I mentioned that she was on a radio program once a month, and she had discussed the movement of the plates. And they had told her, don't mention Planet X, don't mention Nibiru, and don't mention pole shift. And then I had said incorrectly that she was told that she could mention those things. After I talked to Nancy, she straightened me out, and I had misunderstood what she told me. What they told her at the end of the last show was, give your website. You can give your website. And she gave the website Zeta Talk. Well, of course, if you go to Zeta Talk, guess what you're going to discover immediately? Nibiru is Planet X. Nancy is acknowledged as the first person in the world to identify Nibiru as Planet X. And, of course, you're going to learn about pole shift, and you're going to learn about unselfish extraterrestrials. Now, another thing that I got wrong was that I said that the head of the station, which is some sort of emergency broadcast system radio network, I'm not sure the exact name of it. If you go to poleshift.ning.com or you go to zetatalk.com and you look up media, you'll see the listing of where this interview was taken, and that will tell you what the station is. But she said that the person who interviews her has some Homeland Security credentials, and the people that own the station, she understands but doesn't know for sure, are high Homeland Security officials with clearance from above. And so I had said that they told her she could mention Pole Shift and Planet X and Nibiru. But it turns out the only thing that happened was that the person who was interviewing her said, "And do you have a website? Would you give me your website?" And so she was allowed to give Zeta Talk. And that was the first time in this series of interviews that she was allowed to do that. So now I think that basically what I said is correct, but there's no evidence of that. But I'm just, a person just connecting the dots. If they said, give your website, then they would have to be idiots not to know that the first thing you're going to be reading about is Planet X and Pole Shift.
Right.
So I don't think I was that wrong. Nancy wasn't mad at me, but she wanted me to straighten it out. So here I am. I'm straightening that out for you.
Got it.
And, I hope that clears it up. But connecting the dots, I would say that there's some sort of an influence from the powers that be that want this information to come out so that people understand what's going on. And like I said, if the president announces it, he's not going to tell you the whole story. He's going to say something like, President Reagan was president when the IRIS satellite discovered that Planet X was incoming, and they decided to announce it to the world, and the next day they took it back and said, we found Planet X. No, we didn't find Planet X. We're still looking. And at that point, Ronald Reagan signed an executive order making that top secret. So what Obama is going to say is it's taken years, it's been a big fight, but finally I've issued an executive order that makes this rogue planet, Planet X, not top secret. And I can tell you now that it's in between the Earth and the Sun, not directly in line with the Earth and the Sun, but off to the side. So when you look at the Sun, it's at the 4 o'clock position. It's actually half the distance to Earth as it is from the Sun. So it's actually much closer to us now than it is to the Sun. And that's why the Sun appears, if you go out, like I've said for people to do, take a camera on a clear day, which I realize some of you never get a clear day because of chemtrails, all those aluminum particles being sprayed to keep you from seeing the Sun. That's what your problem is. But on a clear day, especially in the morning or the afternoon, the evening, when you get sunrise or sunset, you have the extra atmosphere filtering in a clear sky. That will dim the brightness enough that you can get a picture of the Sun with Planet X next to it. But plenty of people are getting pictures of Planet X next to the Sun taken during the middle of the day. And if you go to poleshift.ning.com, you will see that there is post your latest Planet X pictures here. So people around the world are taking these pictures and sending them in, and poleshift.ning.com is posting them. So if you think I'm making this up, or you haven't seen it yourself, or you're too shy to take a camera and go outside and take a picture of the Sun and then look at the picture, do not look through the camera lens at the Sun. That will blind you permanently. Do not do that. You can go to a welding store and get a number 12 filter, number 13 or number 14 filter. They're green. You push the shutter halfway down in your camera to get the focus correctly. And then before you push it the rest of the way, you put the filter in front of the lens, and then you push the shutter the rest of the way. That's how digital cameras work, is the autofocus sets first. And if you put the glass in front of the lens before you push the shutter halfway down, you will autofocus onto a piece of glass right in front of the camera lens, which is never good. So you want to push the shutter halfway down until it says that it's got the autofocus locked. Then you put the glass in front of the lens. Then you shoot your picture. Then you look at your picture. When you look at your picture, I don't know how there's anybody that can take a picture of the Sun and say that's normal when you've got this glowing caterpillar off to the side, which is Planet X with its twin-stranded tail stretching out towards the Earth, looking like a ball of cotton candy with fuzzy projections. It's like you stuck your hand into a fiberglass insulation bat and pulled some of it out. It's pink, lovely pink color, and it is putting hydrocarbons and oil basically into the atmosphere, and it's creating a greasy sheen that you see around the Sun. And when you look at the Sun through these pictures that you're taking, you will notice that the Sun looks kind of ragged or shaggy. That's because of all the dust in the atmosphere. People have taken photographs half an hour to an hour before sunrise and gotten pink clouds in the east and thought, oh, that's just the sun lighting up the clouds. No, it's not. It's the tail of Planet X in space stretching out towards the Earth. That's what's creating the electromagnetic storms that are disturbing things. So, there's really no excuse. If you want proof, it's out there. I had just seen a wonderful video. It's a picture of this guy, Don Hull, took from the West Coast. He posted on YouTube, and it says, Nibiru nailed it. That's the name of the YouTube video, and it's this picture that he took of Planet X next to the sun during the day. So people are doing this. I don't know why you aren't doing it. You, the listeners, this is your chance. Take a picture like that and call me up and tell me about it. Put it on your Skype page and then call in on Skype. Use that as your profile picture. Whatever you got to do.
4 minutes left.
What?
Got about 4 minutes left.
Okay. Nancy was telling me that there was a huge water main break in Los Angeles. Then there was the train crash in Philadelphia, and then there was a landslide in Norway, and that she felt that was all caused by Planet X moving the northern hemisphere, shifting it so there were these things going on. Well, I said, do you know about the transformer fire at Indian Point Nuclear Plant on the Hudson River in New York? And she didn't. So she looked that up, and a whole bank of transformers just blew up in the middle of the day on Indian Point Nuclear Plant, which is just north of New York City on the Hudson River and just south of West Point. And people were really worried that the nuke was going to go, but instead it's a bank of transformers. They poured foam and water on it to cool it down and washed all the PCBs into the Hudson River. So that must have been a lovely thing.
Right.
So anyway, that could be caused by the electromagnetic tail of Planet X. The landslide on a fjord in Norway could be caused by the movement of the plates. And in the same way, the water main breaks in Los Angeles could be caused by the bowing of the North American continent, Mexico being nudged to be in a curve with. On poleshift.ning.com, her name is Star DiGiacomo. She has a disaster blog, and she keeps track of all these things. So if you want to read them, you can. Now, as for the train crash, it turns out from the data recorder and other things that the driver had just driven a train from New York to Washington for 4 hours. He was given a 61-minute break to go to the bathroom, eat some food, and get back on the train and go north again. And he says he doesn't remember what happened. It's possible that he fell asleep. In any case, he was on a stretch where he should have been doing 70 and going into a curve where he should have been doing 50. He was heading north from Washington to New York when he was going through Philadelphia. He got north of Philadelphia where there was this curve and the train went off. The data recorder shows that he was doing 106 miles an hour when he went into the curve, and he applied the emergency brake, and he was able to brake the train to 102. This is on a curve that's rated at 50 miles an hour. And it's the same curve that has had 4 other tragic derailments in the past. The last big one was in 1943, 79 U.S. servicemen on leave were killed in that crash and like 150 injured.
Wow.
This crash was so serious that it sliced car number 2 in half. So I don't know whether Planet X caused the train to accelerate or whether he fell asleep on the accelerator or what it is. But I will see you next week, March 22nd. Look forward to it. Be good. And try to look a little more into your conspiracy theories there. But I'm sure you want to say the same thing to me. So.
Good night, all.